So my name is Andrew Waldie. I am the business owner, sole proprietor of Hanna Trigger Point Therapy. I've been in town here for Hanna for going on 9 years now. This is my 9th year. I originally came from Toronto, but wanted something different, something smaller, a sense of community, and that's what I found here. And it's just really nice here. The designation itself for what I do physical therapy. It's a specific modality, which is trigger point therapy, and it's basically trying to relax muscle tissue. So there are different types of therapy itself, right, for physical therapy. People, when they go for a massage, they typically think of like effleurage, where there's a rubbing off of the skin itself. They might use like a bioderm cream. What this does actually is it's a static pressure that's applied to the muscle itself, and people typically experience that as a knot, the area that I'm really wanting to work on. They're clothed for it, they're draped in a sheet, and I'm trying to isolate the area of particular focus of tension in the muscle itself, and then try to relax that with a gentle stretch. So although there can be a little bit of discomfort, people typically describe that as almost like a good pain, because there's a little bit of discomfort, but they can actually feel the muscle relaxing, literally within seconds at times. So that's the sort of stuff that I do. It's always done in a biomechanical framework, so that we're looking at if this muscle is tight. So someone comes in, say, combine neck, for instance. They've been doing harvesting. They're looking over their shoulder constantly trying to check in terms of the bale, stuff like that. And they get tightness in a certain area of the neck. So they'll say, I've got tightness here. We can check range of motion, identify where the tightness is. But naturally, because we use a variety of joints at the same time doing a specific activity, we then look beyond that to see what's going on for the individual and try to make that as comprehensive as possible in a single treatment. In terms of doing the trigger point therapy, it was a 2-year program back in Toronto, so I started that in 1995. I graduated after 5 terms in 1997, and I've done it ever since, so this is my 23rd year of practice. That program itself, you had to do a year, like 272 hours or 282 hours of practicum working in a supervised clinic. So I don't include that as part of that training, but that is there as well. It's not my actual background. My background at universities is something completely different, which is economics and political science. So that's at McMaster University in Hamilton, at the U of T in Toronto. But I still use that in the community because I've volunteered at the schools to work with the grade 9, the grade 12 social science classes, teaching stuff from the Industrial Revolution right through to the Cold War. And I've been able to use that for that, plus personal interest. I had a friend who lived here. She worked at the power plant, and for years she had been saying, like, if you want something different, if you want to try something new, why don't you come out here and give it a shot? She herself was from Saskatchewan, and she worked as a chemist there, and I had just become tired after 25 years in Toronto of living there, and I wanted something different because it's a sense that you're there with like the sea of humanity, and there's a lot to enjoy about that culturally. But with that volume of people, you don't necessarily know people, and it's difficult to get that sense of community. So I came out here just to give it a shot. When I came here, the practice itself established itself within about 3 months, unlike Toronto, where you could spend years. Because in this community, we're one extended community. So whether you live in town, whether you're on an acreage, whether you've got a farm or a ranch, or you're in the colonies, we're all part of that sort of extended community where we're all integrating together. And so word of mouth just went like this. So that's one of the things that makes it quite easy. There are challenges that go with that, being a rural entrepreneur as well, but I think those are more personal challenges for me. And nothing that really has to do with here so much. It's more of a personal perspective. That was the 2-year program itself, but the interest in that arose because I had my own business before that, called World Radio Transcription Services. And what I decided to do, because of my interest in economics and political science and human rights, was to monitor stations throughout the world on a regular basis every night for about 6 hours, record them, and then transcribe the broadcasts. But as a result of that, developed repetitive strain in both arms. And I was also preparing for a concert because I was studying a certain type of harp and was playing with something coming from Japan. And so I was really pushing to get that done and just fried my arms basically. And the massage therapist who was working on me did the one type of technique, found that it wasn't working to his satisfaction or mine, and he said, I have this other technique as well that I studied for 2 years. I myself was already in the program to get the basic requirements to do the RMT program, but when he did the trigger point therapy, it started helping immediately for me personally, and I just fell in love with it, and so I applied to that program and was accepted immediately and changed careers. Yeah, exactly, because it gives you a taste, right? It gives you a taste, and from the friends that I've made in this business, I think that people like to give the treatments they receive. So for me, that sort of ischemic compression technique, that static pressure, is something that really resonated with me on a personal level. A really good therapist is always trying to put themselves out of work in a way, because you want to get people better as quickly as possible. And then they go on with their lives. You give them the skills that they need to help keep the areas loosened up, or to either eliminate or at least reduce perpetuating factors, contributing factors to what's going on. So perhaps an example might be someone who sits in a tractor but decides to put the wallet in the back pocket. Well, that throws the low back off, changes the orientation of the shoulders, changes the orientation of the mid-back. If you're looking at that as a factor, then take the wallet out and you've eliminated one factor already. That sort of thing. So there's an importance, in a sense, of trying to get the word of mouth out to other people as well. I would say another difficulty would be, though, in the current economic climate that we have in Alberta, and that is with the downturn in the economy because of oil prices and that. And that is more of it's a personal approach to it, I think, that is the challenge. And it comes back to the idea of community, is that for me, I always have to maintain that sense of community so that you don't go into that scarcity thinking. But that then changes sort of how you can look at people. If you keep the idea that everyone's your neighbor, that you're there to help people out, and there's multiple therapists in town here. With the therapy, they bring their own skill set and their own perspective in that, and they have something to offer as well. So collectively as a group, if I can keep that idea in myself, that the client, my neighbor, is the center of everything, and then what's best for the person that you're working with, but at the same time trying to develop everyone else's business at the same time, because we're all doing this sort of collegially, we're all part of the community, then that makes things move along better. And I think that avoids that idea of scarcity thinking. The most satisfying moments are when people come in, and it happens with most people. They come in discomfort, and then they leave feeling better. And there's a sense of relief, and the quality of their life is improved. And all the times that I can do that, there's a sense of gratitude that goes with that. And this goes back to the city. It's nice to help people there as well, and I can certainly connect with the people that I work with there. But here it's different, because, like I said, with that idea of extended community, everybody's your neighbor. So when you help someone here, it has a sense of immediacy, or a tangible sense to it. And that makes every day special. I don't know how to answer that. I like doing things. I like having an idea and being able to pursue it and to try to manifest it and then review it and see if there are things that I should be doing differently. I say the drive to doing a lot of this stuff is just trying to make a contribution in some way. And that applies to actually most of the stuff that I do in my life, right? Whether it's with family, an immediate family, whether it's the community, because there's like 2 weekends ago, working at the rummage sale. Whatever it is that you're always having the opportunity to work collectively together to make something better for everyone. And so doing this business, I get to do that. It provides, in a sense, it provides, because Carrie does the same thing with her business, there's a sense of leeway in a way in terms of time where we can manage that and help out the kids more if we need to with schooling or something like that. So there's a flexibility that exists. And when you've got two entrepreneurs, you can sort of marry that together in a really nice way. I'll go with Hanna first. When I first came here, the friend said, you're overthinking this way too much. All you need to do is start giving treatment and the word will spread. And that was true. There is a sense of professionalism, obviously, in terms of confidentiality. All of that stuff is respected regardless. With that said, there's a social contract that exists here that doesn't exist in Toronto. So when I came here, I brought a certain, it wasn't called an aloofness, but it was a certain professionalism that created a sort of a detachment that we were encouraged to have. But you can't do that here because that's not the social contract. I came here the year before Centennial. There was tons to be done. There was the history book. A new lodge was opened up. People needed to be moved over from the current lodge, the residents, into the new lodge. So fireworkers are coming out. The pastors or reverends from the different churches and that are coming out. People just from the community, their families. Everyone's helping each other. In the city, you wouldn't sort of get that because you'd be encouraged to keep that social contract quite distant. So shedding that as quickly as possible while maintaining your professionalism and knowing how to balance those hats. That was a challenge initially, but the people of the community help you because you become a member immediately. They're very gracious. Caring about your community as a whole. Caring also about that we're all in this together. Everyone's in it together, especially during economic times that are difficult. So I will gladly refer people over to, say, Chad, to Janet, to Cheryl. Acknowledging everyone's skill set is really, really important. I think that's a second thing. And that we all have stuff to contribute. And that then centers on the notion that the person who is there before you is the center of everything. That's why you're there. You're there to help. And not to see what you do as a career. It provides you with a living. But that is ideally the end result. That shouldn't be the motivation. The motivation is to help people. And then all of us help each other collectively. Growth is perpetual. I've done this for 23 years. I learn every day. It's just, it's constantly being receptive to what you're doing and being receptive to what you're doing and being there in the moment. In terms of what I do, for instance, there's this notion we don't diagnose because diagnosis is a regulated act under the RHPA legislation federally. But when you're working on someone, for instance, you have a general idea, you do your intake, you're really, really thorough, listen to the person who's talking to you, be as comprehensive as you can, give the time that's needed, but then be mindful of what you're treating and what you find in the course of treatment, because things will just reveal themselves in terms of certain muscles that you might not have thought were tight because maybe the person, I don't know, maybe they sprained something beforehand or they had a break and the collarbone was shortened because they were bucked off a horse or something like that. So these things, you take them into consideration, but you're constantly fine-tuning. So always maintain a dynamic approach in terms of this business to what you're doing with the client, but also just sort of maintain your focus with who you're helping and then where you are in the community. I think what I want to do is to try to expand this and then try to look for other ways of helping people in different settings. So in Toronto, for instance, there was a person that I had treated, very much like the treatment themselves, and said at the company for which I work, he was a manager, fairly high up, do you think that this would be beneficial for workers who are there? And I said, theoretically it would be, but how about I have a tour of the plant, go through the 5 divisions of the plant, talk to workers, do some of the work myself to see what the ergonomics were, and then come up with a plan for you in terms of what people who would be, which people would be participating and what might be beneficial for them on an individual basis. So in doing that, it ended up being within 3 months with that business, absenteeism due to repetitive strain was completely eliminated. So that saved them just thousands of dollars, just like that. And so I would go on site and do treatments. Well, now that I'm thinking that could be done here as well. So there are a few ideas that I have that I want to put forward. And I've been able to track down the one person who's now working in the energy sector in Europe. He's back in France, and he's willing to write a letter of reference. So I'm trying to keep promoting it into wider areas and seeing if there's any receptivity to that. It's almost like reinventing yourself constantly. This is very, very easy. Be the change you want to see. It's by Mahatma Gandhi. I love it. And there's also Yoda. Do it or not, there is no try. I think it might be the efficacy of the treatment itself. So again, the usefulness of treatment, right, will depend upon the individual. Some people respond really well to massage therapy. Some people respond to ART, chiropractic, whatever it is. So in a way, it's going to be determined by personal preference, but also the underlying condition itself. Is it muscularly based? Is it something which is skeletal? Whatever that is. Typically what I found, though, with this treatment is the results, if it's muscular, without an acute inflammatory state. If there's like a tear or something like that, you wouldn't work on that person immediately. There has to, you would look at other options for them. But if it's repetitive strain, typically the results are immediate within one treatment. And the results are lasting, especially if that's based in a level of spasticity in the muscle, which can be identified and eliminated almost immediately. Because that sort of stuff happens like literally within seconds. If you can identify where that 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters of muscle tissue is, that's going to induce that twitch. So I think that's what I would like them to know about the modality generally. I think it's really important during hard economic times that I need to remind myself frequently of, and it might pertain to someone else as well, like to other people, in order to help keep that sense of community during rough and economic times. And that was that you can have an idea of the, how did he describe it? It was the food court economics. So where I grew up during my late adolescence in high school was in Mississauga, shortly after Mississauga was made from all these different hamlets. So you had places like Mimico, Port Credit, Credit Woodland, stuff like this, but there's all this space in between. It was all farmland. We had Square One, which was this massive shopping plaza, right, shopping mall that was larger than West Edmonton at the time. But in this place, you only had 3 businesses that were selling food. You had an Orange Julius, a German delicatessen, and a European bakery, and that was it. Between the 3 of them, they had a virtual monopoly. But the population back then was like 360,000 people in Mississauga. By the time that I left, when I went through Mississauga, it was almost 800,000 people. There was almost no farmland left. It was just apartments, townhouses everywhere. And Square One was absolutely massive, and there was a huge food court with maybe 20 restaurants there. So the idea is that you can have people doing similar things to what I do, but to keep viewing them as still members of the community, we're all in it together. So although you might get a smaller piece of the pie, collectively you have so much to offer because people want to go to the food court. So it's like Hanna, right? The motto is, it's worth the drive. We have Dr. Larson. Dr. Kempinski comes and works with Dr. Larson as a chiropractor. She has her own techniques in assessment that are slightly different, that suit other clients. There's Chad, who works there as well. There's Patrick May, who does the kinesiology and helps with rehab. We have Chris, for instance, and Carrie them up at the physiotherapy. We have Cheryl, who works in town, doing registered massage therapy. Teresa's here as well, and Janet, with whom I work. And together, with all these skill sets, we have so much that we can offer the community. So I must constantly remind myself that these people are not competitors, right? It's not that I've got a business against someone else's business. It's that we've got a community and we're all serving the community. And that's what it's all about. And that's where that sense of gratitude comes from.